Hello, everyone. This is Teen Talk with Rec. Welcome. This is where we update you on how your student representatives are working to advocate on your behalf to Mount Royal University and to all three levels of government, as well as to the public and the media. I'm joined by my buddy Spirit River Stripewolf, the president of the SAMRU Representation Executive Council, and myself, I'm Joseph Nguyen, vice president of Student Affairs. Today, we're chatting with Chris Rogerson, the executive director of Student Affairs at Mount Royal University.
In this interview, we'll be chatting about MRU's phased approach to return to campus.
Then we'll be chatting about student services, especially since we as students are paying more for them in our tuition.
Students are worried about jobs. We'll be asking about how career services can help you during and after you graduate.
And finally, SAMRU Rec cares about your mental health and well-being. These COVID times are increasing counseling wait times and isolation in residence. What can we do more as a community to help?
So let's just get right into it, Chris. I'm not sure many students are familiar with you and your role. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your responsibilities?
Absolutely. And thanks very much for inviting me to be a part of it. It's great to be here with you. I'm Chris Rogerson, and as the Executive Director of Student Affairs, it's a new position, and I'm actually new to Mount Royal. I started here back in July. And so haven't been here long, but have always known a lot about Mount Royal. I did my high school here in Calgary many years ago. And so always known about Mount Royal and its attention to the student experience. And so was very excited about the opportunity to be able to come back to Alberta and join Mount Royal. In my role specifically, I have the absolute pleasure of working across the institution, both with departments that work with me, with the student association, with faculty and staff and the local community to really co-create a high quality student experience. So whether or not working with our student learning services department and being able to provide high quality academic supports to our students, all the way up to how can we provide a quality residence experience, whatever it might be. And also, how do we support those students in being able to thrive within their academic program? And so, yeah, that's kind of the wonderful role that I have, and got the pleasure of working with people like yourselves and meeting with students along their journey here at Mount Royal. So,
awesome. Well, thanks for joining us here today. Let's just get right into it. So at SAMRU, our position is that in an ideal world, students are informed of key policy changes and updates throughout the year that directly impacts them as students, especially around COVID-19. How would you grade MRU's communication to students, especially around COVID, especially with the nuances of this phased return to in-person course delivery?
You know, as you talk there, Spirit, one of the things that just comes to my mind is who would have thought 2 years after the start of a pandemic that we are still needing to pivot and change and alter, and that this is still a large part of our reality. It's in my career, I've never experienced something like this, and it's been an amazing learning opportunity. But at the same time, I think for everybody, just challenging and frustrating that this continues to be something that is impacting our experience of how we are delivering and how we are experiencing our learning. So, you know, you're talking about grading, and I'm always leery there because I would want to look at the deliverables and all of those different things. But, you know, the one thing I would probably say here is Mount Royal has always wanted to try to be as clear and coherent and open and transparent about what's happening when it comes to our learning objectives, as far as our health measures and how we are responding to this ever-changing thing called the pandemic. You know, whether it's creating multiple ways to be able to deliver, like online emails, social media, creating email accounts where people can communicate. Can I say that we've been perfect and deserve the A+, and we should be the poster for absolutely best? No, but I really do believe that Mount Royal is really doing our best to listen, adapt, and make changes. You know, I think about this current shift. I've joined Mount Royal from BC, and Mount Royal took the proactive measure in late December to announce that it would be waiting, that the online transition would be happening a little bit later in January, giving our faculty and giving our students some advanced knowledge so they can be prepared for that, as compared to that last minute pivot. And that last minute, 2 days before going, surprise. Is it still frustrating for everybody? Absolutely. And you were talking specifically about that graduated return. While other institutions have, chosen a hard date where everything is either on campus or off, Mount Royal has chosen a phased-in approach. And that phased-in is to ensure that we're looking, and faculty are looking at each one of the classes and what's best for that specific course and that delivery of that course. And so having that slow phased return, I know that many of us would like to know, yesterday, and know for certain, what will be the day that I will be back, and can we say that Omicron is a thing of the past? And I think we would all like to be there. One of the things that's happened there is hopefully, and we know that faculty members have been letting their students know specific in each one of their own classes what the plans are for that specific class. There's a website where we're trying to update all of the dates as soon as we know them, when people can expect to be transitioning back to in person. But the one last thing that I would say is, while that is happening there, we have remained committed to be maintaining all of our services available. I have been really proud of, even when we may not have all of our courses on campus, all of our services, whether it's library or housing or academic advising, are available and open for people to be able to be on campus and gain that support that should they need. Going back to that, communication, if anybody has any thoughts or guidance on the best way to communicate to a community of more than 15,000 in a way that is going to land and resonate, please, feedback and opportunity for feedback is helpful. I'm reminded of a time when I was working at an institution, and I asked the question, what would be the best, most desirable way that you would like to receive communication from the institution? And there was not even a top 5. There was a top 8. And so what works for some people doesn't work for others. Anyways, I talked a lot there. Sorry about that, Stuart.
No, I think that's really good. I really like what you're talking about. I think that's a lot of really interesting information. I think by the time that this podcast will have been released to membership, we'll have already gone through this phased approach to return to in-person. But you talked a little bit about the paleological approach. Do you think that this phased return, and this is kind of just a question I thought while you were speaking, right? Like thinking about what would students want to know about this? What kind of questions would they be asking? Do you think that this phased return is superior to, say, the U of C approach or the other school approaches, where it's like after I think it's the 28th or something like that we're all in regardless? Do you think that there's some benefits to this phased approach?
I personally think there's benefits. I would never compare institution to institution. And the reason I say that is the culture, the experience, and the ability of certain institutions, whether they're smaller or larger, whatever it might be, really should play in. And that's where I think Mount Royal has done something that I think is really beneficial. Is one of the things we're known for is that we have small class sizes. Here at Mount Royal, you're not going to have a generalized lecture of 400, 500 people. And so you can create a little bit more of that intimate experience, and you have that high quality and high touch academic environment. So it creates a little bit of a different experience there. And so I do think it's a positive. And I also think that it really allows us to take a look at some of the uniquenesses of some of our programs to make sure that we have the delivery that is most important and most reflective of that program. I think of, for example, we're sitting here doing a podcast. I'm thinking about people in some of our broadcast programs where having access to equipment that they, of course, don't have at home, and learning how to use that equipment, and just doing that in a virtual setting may not give that tactile, hands-on, practical experience that is going to lead to the best. And so we don't have to say all classes are coming back at this time, but in where it makes sense and where we can do it safely, people can have that opportunity to be able to not lose out on that richness of that quality of education. Because as we go through this, what's really important for me is we want the quality of education, post-secondary, and what you're studying. It's about the enrichment, the growing of our own competencies and our knowledge, but also our careers. And we want to make sure that we've got that high level knowledge. So where we can have that in person. So I am proud of Mount Royal for not putting all of our programs into a one size fits all approach, and allowed that to be responsive.
I think that's really fair. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. Just for time, we'll move on here, but I'll just remind our listeners that we're speaking to Chris Rogerson. He's the Executive Director of Student Affairs at Mount Royal University. And we're talking about things that we just finished talking about, COVID, and communicating how we're returning back to in-person in this winter semester. I'll pass it on now to Joseph for the next question.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how great those answers were. Thank you. I like how you mentioned that each institution is different with a culture and members and, different, even like locations and different sizes and whatnot. And I think that was a very insightful answer. Let's move on to student services. So under the SA or Student Affairs portfolio, there's obviously student services. And Chris, if you remember me, you, Yasmin, Rachel, and Phil, I believe, were in a meeting where we were talking about student services and how they were being improved. Remember how we were like, tuition's getting more expensive. There's a student service fee increase. Like, what are students getting out of it? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the increases. Let's talk about how the student services have improved and how that has been reflected in that fee increase.
Well, and thanks for that compliment, Joseph. I think one of the benefits that I have is I get to work with great student representation like yourself and SAMRU and other student leaders. And it's important that, you and I have talked about it, but for me, it's important that the institution and our services that we are doing with, not for. We're co-creating that experience. And to do that, we need to be responsive and we need to be able to respond. But at the same time, we need to recognize that post-secondary is expensive, and it can get more and more challenging to afford to go to school. And so increases in fees are not taken lightly because we never want to put barriers in front of our students that limit the ability. And so, I think for me, one of the things that's really important when we talk about any type of fee changes, making sure that we are looking at our affordability of our programs. And so, when I was in a meeting last week, and I wanted to know, because I'm relatively new, about financial aid, for example, right? And making sure, we give out over $4 million of scholarships, awards, and bursaries every year to really make sure that finance doesn't get in the way. Still doesn't change the fact that things come up. And one of the areas that I think is really important is, for example, emergency bursaries. As fees go up and become challenging, there becomes a tighter pressure on our fees and on our disposable income that we have. But at the same time, COVID has created limited options for part-time work and family access to money. So one of the ways that we've made sure to increase is we've increased the overall amount for our emergency bursaries and actually doubled it. And so I'm really excited that we are not only attending to service levels, but also to affordability throughout that time. But one of the things that I want to highlight on some of the benefits and some of the changes, one of them is as those fees have increased, we've been trying to remove access fees. So for example, it used to cost money to go to, if you wanted to attend our new student orientation. New student orientation, we want to make sure that everybody is benefiting from that and that there's not. So we removed that fee so that it's just a basic and available to everybody. And so that was really important. But the one that I'm most proud of is the early support program. Many people may not, sometimes may know about it, but may not. But our early support program is, and basically search MRU and early support. It's a way that any staff, faculty, or student can submit a report and say, hey, I need some help. And I don't know where to start. And we've got an amazing group of people who are going to help navigate. And we have tripled the response for that. And so in the past year alone, we had over 500 people that we were able to help and being able to get connected. And this helps make sure that we don't have people going too long without getting access to the support that they need. And I was really happy with that. And so that expansion of that program, we're actually looking at how we can create a robust technological solution to help that as well, to really support students. And so that's how we utilize some of that extra funds to be able to enhance that service for our students.
Wow, well, that's awesome. I'm just reminding listeners once again, this is Chris Rogerson, EDSA, Executive Director of Student Affairs, came fresh in July, and we are heading to our next topic. Our next topic is student employment, Chris. And this year, one of my goals is I've trying to reduce barriers between career services and students. I can see that there's lots of barriers. There's acknowledged barriers, there's advertising barriers, there's so much. And basically, I'm trying to improve its functionality and recognition to students. So especially since students are worried about employment during and after they graduate, as you may hear, if a student goes to career services, can they expect a job? How does the process work?
Joseph, I love that you are advocating for that career pathing for our students, because that work experience, many of our students are coming to Mount Royal to get that next stage, that next phase. So here's what I would probably say. One of the limitations is in the career world and the job readiness of our students and our graduates is we need to try to help our students identify that at day one is when we need to be thinking about our career. I think about my own journey. I started off as a business student at University of Lethbridge, actually. And when I got there, I realized very quickly that was not going to be for me. And I actually got hired into a student leadership position that ultimately absolutely transformed my career path. So much so that that's how I got into student services. And so the thing that we need to help our students recognize is how do we participate in that career journey? And unfortunately, sometimes people think, okay, I'm now about to graduate, careers. What am I going to do? How do I get that job? But what we need to do is look at what is their goal, help them understand to assess and evaluate where their strengths and where their competencies they currently have and that industry or sector that they're looking for, and ultimately put a path together. So I think of a student who maybe has never had an opportunity to have a work experience before, whatever it might be, how they can intersect with career services is we can be a part of that journey early on. So we can help identify where those gaps might be and help to fill those. So for example, if they don't have leadership experience, or how to articulate the amazing leadership experience they've had with being on our campus. And so how do we help facilitate that journey? Because if we wait until how do I get me the job I want? But if you've never had that experience, so whether it's a co-op opportunity or a workplace experience or helping assess and evaluate their experience, creating a mentorship program where you can start getting connected and networking with industry leaders in our Harry G mentorship program. In our career services, we not only have workshops on resume writing and all of those different things, like the resources there, but we also have the job platform, which is the My Career Hub, getting involved in there early in that first year so that they can see all of the opportunities and take part of those. And we have amazing industry or career staff that are working with industry. So if you've been thinking of how do I become like a sports broadcaster or how do I become, an entrepreneur, we can connect and we can align people with those. And then to your point, at the very end, even after you graduate, we're here to help. How do you now translate your Mount Royal experience to be the best quality prospect for your job? Like if you think about it, like whatever program you're in, Joseph, right? Everybody who's graduating in your program, it's going to be about the same. but why is Joseph unique? What do you bring to it? And how do we help you intentionally curate your job experience? And we've got a lot of opportunities that can happen there. But going back to it, I think one of the key things, how do we get that conversation with career services right off at the beginning of their academic experience at Mount Royal? That would be what I really hope people take from this, is don't wait until your last year. Come and participate and gain an understanding at that beginning part.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. Just a quick side question for students who are interested. Lots of students I know, they don't know what the career path is. Like they join some degree and they're like, I'm just in university for the sake of being university. Can career services help those people too?
Absolutely. And actually, many places on campus can do that. We've got some workshops that are through our student learning services, like taking a look at what brings you passion in your academics and how to bring that. In our counseling area, being able to kind of explore what brings you passion. Our early support can kind of help with that. And let's be honest, many people are like me. When you started your degree, you might have had one idea and then you actually got into that learning and you went, pivot, no, back out. But what is the benefit is how do you create the uniqueness of your experience, like layering on the classes and the within your area. So to become your area of specialty.
Okay, that's perfect.
Awesome. We're talking with Chris Rogerson, the Executive Director for Student Affairs over at Mount Royal University. The last question we have for you is around mental health and well-being before we start wrapping up here. One of it has to do with counseling services and the availability of counseling services. And the other one is the isolation, especially around COVID right now for students and residents. So I want to know, how do you think those students are doing in residence, and how do you think our counseling service is doing in general during this COVID time?
Oh, Spirit, I'm going to get you to prompt me as well, because mental health and well-being is a passion and a very key and important concept that we must weave and interplay into absolutely everything we do with our students. Because let's just think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We don't have that safety and that health and that mental stability. We can't expect learning to happen. So it is pivotal and important that we have that. When I think about COVID and the myriad of things that are causing, you were talking about isolation, and I think about our students who live alone or who are single parents or are in a marginalized or in a equity deserving group, that they've been differentially affected. These are challenges, and this, it's not something that you can leave at the door when you get into your studies, and we need to prop up and support that. Are there at times long wait lines or difficulties getting into counseling? Absolutely. And unfortunately, we're no different than the general population of mental health services. It's hard to meet the demand. And this is weird to say, but it's actually a good news story, because we're doing a good job at breaking down the stigma that mental health is a bad thing, and that getting help and seeking help is a bad thing. And so it's really great to see people reaching out for help prior to it being problematic. And to be honest, it's going back to that early support. This is why that service is so important. When we think about it, it's called a step care model. If you think about it, we don't need in like a healthcare model, you don't need the emergency room in the hospital for every healthcare thing that's experienced, but we need avenues to be able to gain access to other ways. So where do we have after hours support? How do we have access to peer-based support? And many of our students may just have a need to be able to talk to somebody who can say, yeah, that's tough, and help break through it, but may not need counseling right away. And so how can we create those? And so that's one of the focuses that we are trying to do. You'll see that there's some new access to services and support. SAMRU has some great services just in being able to have some peer support. How do we have those multiple access points to be able to support the students and make sure that those with the most amount of at risk are getting access to our great services like counseling? But I also think about, and I'll be very quick on this one, is how are we as a Mount Royal community supporting and recognizing each other? For mental health and well-being, I think one of the most important things that we can do is recognize our colleagues and our peers and our students and our friends, and just being able, we will see that if you haven't seen them or if they're not connecting in, just a simple "How are you?" and "Do you need anything?" Looking out for each other. The place of we. We are in this together. What can I do for you? I know that many of us are our own selves taxed and challenged to be able to maintain our own health and well-being. But just knowing when you have 18,000 people who are genuinely interested to make sure that you are doing the best that you can and committed to being able to get you the access that you need, I think that's really important. And that's why I think while we've got some students in housing that might be attending online, they have got a community around them of people who are in a joint experience to reduce that sense of isolation. They have access to online supports or in-person supports. They can go to the library. They can go to our Rex facility. That's why it's been really important to keep those things available to our students when they need to be there, because it does create that community. And as a community, we can raise and elevate the health and well-being of everybody. Can we do more, and do we need to do more? There will never be enough mental health supports, in my opinion. And I look forward to being able to grow those and build on that capacity.
Awesome. Well, that takes us to the end of this session with you, Chris. I think a lot of what you mentioned is really important. And I think the one thing I'd want to highlight for students is what you said about what Mount Royal has for students and what SAMRU has for students. Students can go to samru.ca, and if you go under the tab "What We Do for You," there's different programs, services, health and wellness, and other resources and referrals for students there as well. And Chris, I don't know if you'd add anything else, but the one that I would say for away from SAMRU and in the Mount Royal sphere is probably the academic success tab on the MyMRU webpage, because I know that that's an area that's been tried and true for many students, and definitely an area that students go to all the time. So please check out those areas. Do you have any last minute plugins?
I could plug for a long time. I want to thank the two of you and thank SAMRU. We're in this journey and we're in this experience together. And I know how hard that you are working to listen to students and be able to advocate, but also create opportunities for students. And I think it's really important. For me, I think the last thing that I would say is we know that all of our students bring a uniqueness of themselves to the institution. And sometimes it's hard to find, how do I fit and where does it go? And because it's complicated. So I guess for me, the one thing that I would say is if you don't know where to start at earlysupport.ca. If you're just like, hey, this is what I'm going, and there is people there that can point you in the right direction and get you connected. And because we're in this together, and really excited. And so I want to thank you for inviting me today. I really appreciate it. Just shows how much we're all dedicated to ensuring our students thrive. So thank you.
Definitely. And we appreciate you coming here, joining us here today.
Chris, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Now we will be stepping into a time of news segment. Some quick updates we have for our student body. On our first news update, we have President Streckwolf recommending to Councillor Courtney Walcott that the city should engage more with MRU's social innovation students on how to engage spaces around campus. For some context, Councillor Courtney Walcott is the councillor for Ward 8, which is MRU's ward. This was an introductory meeting with SAMRU Rec, and it went very, very well. At a meeting with Kayleen McTavish, MRU's NSO, or New Student Orientation Coordinator, we advocated for an additional NSO event for students who are accepted in August/September. Some students are accepted August/September, which is unfortunate because they miss out on NSO events and opportunities to have a sense of belonging at MRU. And we were just looking out for the students as well. Additionally, we advocated for NSO to focus on creating community as opposed to providing information on MRU. This would look like, more icebreakers, community building activities, encouraging networking, encouraging adding each other's contact information, etc., etc. This is because students have found NSO to be information overload at times, which could be daunting. At the selection committee for the manager of academic advising, we gave the opinion that the next manager in this position should be student-oriented with their work. They should understand and focus on quality MRU student experience, as well as be in tune with student needs and have a strong relationship with SAMRU. Additionally, we gave the opinion that the next manager of academic advising should be able to have an inclusive approach. They should ensure that academic advisors can tailor to students who experience barriers, such as international students. At GFC, the General Faculties Council, VP Ahmed and President Striped Wolf, and the GFC student ambassadors voted in favor of the motion to implement a COVID pass/COVID fail option for the winter 2022 semester. Some of you folks may be familiar with this COVID pass, COVID fail option as it was implemented in the winter 2020 semester. At a meeting with Chris Rogerson, the man, the myth, the legend, the person we just had a podcast with, he's also the executive director of student affairs, we advocated that clear and early communication to students should be a priority regarding the gradual transition from online to in-person. And last but not least, on February 10th, your very own SAMRU Rec hosted a town hall where we addressed student concerns regarding the faculty strike. And with that, we wrap up our news segment.
So that's all we have time for. We have for today's episode. We hope you found value in our podcast, and we look forward to updating you on how your SAMRU Rec team is working and representing you to help you succeed.
To the next episode, this was Spirit River Stripe Wolf from Joseph Nguyen. We'll see you next time.